started with these slides, I want to make 2 points. You know, we live in a fairly corrupt world, and it's becoming a requirement with many journals now that an author state that their connections that might involve a conflict of interest. So I want to make a disclaimer. I have no financial or material interests in fluoridation. And if anyone mentions that book, the royalties are donated to the Fluoride Action Network. So I'm clean. However, I was born in Texas, as Mel said, but I'd like to assure you that as far as I can tell, I've recovered. So anyway, I've been here in Calgary since 1969, and now about 11 or 12 years ago, I was asked to be on a committee of 5 dentists and 1 family physician who were opposed to fluoridation. And so up to that time, having been quite fully occupied in developing a new faculty of medicine and research and teaching, I hadn't paid any attention to fluoridation. But when I looked at it, I was appalled. And I'll tell you why. But at that time, so I began to study the issue, particularly the science about it, and the science which determines whether it's effective or not. So in order to discuss this, I like to divide it into 3 questions, which I've put here. The little history I'll not bother you with. If you have questions later about how we got into this situation, I will try to answer them. But I think the essential questions are, is it effective as a preventive of cavities, of dental caries? And secondly, is it safe? Are there toxicities that we have to be concerned with? And thirdly, is it ethical? The first and third questions are not difficult, it seems to me. The third question is very simple, and I'll end with that one. The efficacy is something that I think we have pretty strong answers to. The question of is it safe is fairly complicated. In some cases we can be very sure about the associations of fluoridation with some health problems. In other cases we only have hints of that, or how it's possible. But I'll explain some of those as we go along. So if we could go to the next slide, I'll make 4 points and on to the next about this problem of efficacy. The first one I show you on the next slide, which is a graph taken from the data collected by the World Health Organization, which is a promoter of fluoridation. But we've looked at that data. See if you can go to the next slide, Mel. And this is very simple. We don't have to be scientists or statisticians or anything to understand, and I think be impressed by this simple graph. There are represented here 18 countries. And on this axis here, this DMFT means the, how do we say it? When the number of teeth that are either missing or filled are diseased. So that's what the diseased, missing, filled teeth, that is. And on the ordinate here is, the abscissa here is just dates. This starts in 1955 and goes to 2005. Well, actually it's more like 1965 to 2004. There are 18 countries represented. 4 of them are fluoridated, and 14 are not, and you can't tell the difference. They're mixed up in there. If you bother to go to the color coding, you can see that some are, anyway, there's essentially no significant distinction among any of those countries. So we have, but it is impressive, isn't it, that the history over those decades of the incidence of of cavities has gone down quite steadily. But it happened in both fluoridated and non-fluoridated countries. So we can say, oh yes, it's gone down, but it's not due to fluoridation. We aren't sure what it's due to, but there are some very reasonable suggestions, like improved diet, improved dental care, and a general rise in the status of our living, so that parents with higher incomes can have time to take care of their children, teach them how to brush their teeth, make sure they spit out the toothpaste, and so on. And but we don't really know what the cause is. But we're pretty sure it's not the fluoride, because there are 14 countries there that didn't have fluoride. So if we go to the next slide, we'll get a little bit closer to how we try to find out about the efficacy of fluoridation. Now, fluoridation, by the way, is the addition of some source of fluoride ion to a public water supply. And I may not get to talk about what we add to the water and why, but you can ask me about that later if we have time and if you're interested. But I've given you 3 ways to study epidemiologically. That is, an epidemiological study is where you look at a population or 2 populations and compare them with respect to some outcome, like having cavities. And so there are 3 ways that's been done with respect to fluoridation. One is choosing a city and 2 cities. And this is the way the 4 major studies that started in 1945 were done. Take 2 cities, and one of them, they're supposedly comparable cities in terms of economic status and the population characteristics and so on. But you fluoridate one and leave the other unfluoridated. This, by the way, was done in New Zealand and Canada and the United States. And by the way, without asking the citizens whether they wanted it. And so that's something I'll come to when you discuss ethics, because how you ask citizens is important. Anyway, so you compare the 2 studies over the years. These studies were supposed to go over a 10-year span from 1945 to 1955. None of them showed a benefit of fluoridation with respect to the incidence of caries. The New Zealand study was outright fraudulent. The data was misrepresented and so on. It was just a disaster. There was 1 study in Brantford that was a fluoridated city in Canada, and in 2 in the United States. And the other 2 ways to look at the effect of fluoridation on the incidence of cavities is to take a city or a group. A city is usually the way it's done, that hasn't been fluoridated ever. And then you observe the prevalence of cavities, and then you fluoridate. And you start looking for the same sort of data, the prevalence of cavities after fluoridation, and see whether there's any change. Another way is to consider just 1 city. The other one requires an experimental city and control city. The other way is to look at a city that hasn't been fluoridated and start it and watch. The reverse of that is to look at a fluoridated city, stop fluoridation, and see what happens. None of those methods has shown efficacy, has shown that it had anything more than the very slightest possible benefit. And I'll show you that in a moment. But at times, you see, the change in the city when you stop fluoridations, the teeth get better. And so usually they'd stay about the same incidence of cavities. But it's never been the other way. It's never, you've never shown that the number of the incidence of cavities goes up when you stop fluoridating. The proponents of fluoridation are always screaming at us, don't stop, you'll have a terrible epidemic of caries. But we've had studies of that, and that doesn't happen. So if we go on to the next slide, this is the famous or infamous Newburgh Kingston study in New York from 1945 to 1955. The reason I'm showing it is this is, again, the DMFT, you know, the diseased, missing, and filled teeth. And this is the age of the at which this is measured. So you can see that at the beginning of the study up there, there's essentially no difference in the two observations, that of the observation of the fluoridated city and the observation of the control city. Now you move along to 10 years later at the end of the study, and you might be impressed because the control study, Kingston, the city, Kingston, has a higher level for all ages of caries than the fluoridated city. So that looks promising. However, if you look at how the study was done, you see that in the fluoridated city, the criteria for making a diagnosis of caries, of cavities, was changed so that the bar had been raised. So obviously there would be fewer caries reported, which that change wasn't made in the control city. There were other serious problems with this study. For example, there were 7,000 children involved in the study at the beginning, and only 1,000 later. That was never explained. So there's a lot of difficulties with that. But here, curiously, we can move on to 1986, and you see the two are alike again. And that suggests that whatever produced that difference, that effect has faded out. And finally, in 1995, there's a similar thing. The indication of disease of caries here is lower in all cases, but that was happening, as we saw in that first slide, for many countries, fluoridated or not. So now if we could go on to the next one then. And this is one of the best studies for efficacy that's been done. And it was done under the auspices of the National Institute for Dental Research in the United States. And the government agencies generally were promoters, and still are, of fluoridation, despite the information that it indicates that it may not be effective. And it involved 39,000 children in these 84 different communities. And on the next slide, you'll see the results. So this in the non-fluoridated group, you had the value of 3.4 of disease, missing, and filled teeth. And excuse me, these are surfaces. It's not DMFT now, it's DMFS. So you're looking not at just a tooth and see if it's affected or not, but you're looking at each surface on the tooth. There are about 128 surfaces. So it's a much more precise evaluation. And in the fluoridated, there were fewer diseased, missing, or filled teeth. Again, it looks like a benefit. But what benefit? In 5 to 17-year-olds, the benefit was 0.6 of a tooth surface out of 128. Now, that looks like a benefit, but it's a pretty tiny benefit. So we'll have to consider the value of such a benefit in relation to the possible harm that can be done, which we will get to. But another point, which the proponents never tell us about, is, and there's well-established research and general agreement among dental researchers, that fluoridation, as used in fluoridation programs, the presence of fluoride, it delays the eruption of the teeth. Now, in our lives, our teeth erupt twice. The deciduous teeth, when we're infants, come in, and then they're replaced a few years later by the permanent teeth. If the teeth haven't erupted, they're not exposed to the acids that are developed from the sugars and the bacteria that operate on the sugars that are in the mouth, and that's what causes the cavities. So the teeth are protected. So if you give people fluoride, and their teeth don't come out as soon, it looks like they have fewer cavities because you gave them fluoride. Well, they do, but not because the fluoride is effective in protecting the teeth. It's because the fluoride is effective in hiding the teeth. And that's rarely accounted for in most of the research I've been talking about now. So in the next slide, we can see the results in another similar study, and this was done in Australia, and it shows a gain, if you will, of 0.1 to 0.3 tooth surfaces. And in the next slide, there's another result shown, and this one they found no difference. So we could go on to the next slide. I have too many slides, so we don't want to dwell too long on any of them. Now, this is an important point. You've probably heard this argument, and probably from some of your council members here in Calgary. We mustn't stop fluoridation because fluoridation helps children of low-income families who can't afford good dental care. The dentists don't like to talk about giving them care, but they'll want us to give them fluoride, for most of them do. And so they say this would be, the fluoridation is necessary, particularly for children in low-income families, because they don't have these other benefits like a good diet, like parents who have the time to teach them to brush their teeth, and so on. That question has come up quite a few times. So what has been done is actual studies, if you can go to the next slide, that show that if you take a group of children in low-income families, that's not in an area that's not fluoridated, and compare them with a group of children in low-income families, the same socioeconomic level, but is not fluoridated, no difference. So it's not the fluoride that's making a difference. What's making a difference is this. This is a study by the New York Department of Oral Health, and they took all the data from all the counties in New York State, and they looked at the percent of third graders in each county with cavities, and then they compared that with their per capita income in the county, and you can see that it's not a very precise set of data, but the line is what you can get from analyzing that data with some degree of certainty, but it seems clear that the higher your income, the less cavities you have, the fewer cavities you have. So we can go on to the next slide, and these are results from 4 different countries in the kind of observation I described last, where you have a community that's been fluoridated and stop fluoridation and watch what happens. And in none of these cases did the incidence of caries rise. So that's not all of the data we have in that kind of, all of the results we have in that kind of study, but it's some of them. I put them on these slides, and I talked to different kinds of groups, and I think it's very important for those of us who are opposed to fluoridation, and maybe I should have said at the beginning I'm opposed to fluoridation, but I'm not lying to you when I tell you about these results. You may not like my interpretation, and I do have a viewpoint, so I warn you of that, okay?
That top line, by the way, says recent studies indicate that dental caries has not gone up.
Yep.
The up isn't shown on our screen. Sorry
Yep.
about that.
So you have to tell us whether it's up or down, right? Okay. It hasn't gone up in these studies or in others that have been done in a similar manner. So in the next slide, let's see what we have. We'll move on to the problem of toxicity. And this is a more complex one because there are lots of different kinds of toxicities possible. And it's the thing that the proponents are most afraid of. And I should go back now on one point with respect to efficacy and say that most or all, perhaps, dental researchers now agree that if there is any benefit to fluoridation, it's topical. That is, it operates on the tooth surface itself. Probably not significantly at the concentrations we use fluoridation for, but dentists do apply high concentrations in the office, to your teeth and put veneers on. If you do have that done in the office and they are very careful to get the fluoride out of your mouth before you start swallowing, okay. But the veneers continue over weeks or months, producing in fluoride in the mouth and that you swallow, and that's not good. So, okay, the reason I want to approach it this way is because we opponents of fluoridation are often criticized for saying that this one little ion can be so terrible and cause all these different things. But anyone who considers the following facts will know that it is to be expected that we'll have a variety of different effects on human health. This is just points out that how you can compare the concentration of water in the water, drinking water, with the concentration in mother's milk. That figure, 0.004, there are different results for different observations, and that's probably one of the minimums. So, some have come out with as much as 0.01 part per million, but even 0.01 is 100 times less than what's put in most fluoridating city water. In Calgary now, we use 0.7 parts per million. But, so you have to ask yourself, why was evolution so determined to keep fluoride out of mother's milk? And probably because it's not good for babies. But it's something, that leads one to ask some serious questions about the safety of the fluoridation program. And then the last point is this maximum acceptable concentration is a Canadian standard, and this has been lowered just in the last week or two. Has been lowered to 0.7. Or they're proposing to lower to 0.7. Also, the EPA is making the same change. The EPA has in 2003, it asked the National Academies of Science asked the National Research Council, these are in the United States, to study, to evaluate whether their safe level of 4 parts per million was adequately low. And so a panel of 12 scientists were established to try to determine the answer to that question. Among these 12 scientists, there were some that had publicly said they were in favor of fluoridation. There were some who said publicly they were against fluoridation, and there were some who didn't seem to have any position on the matter. And they were from various disciplines. They studied this problem for 3 years. They looked at 1,100 primary scientific papers and wrote a 507-page analysis and evaluation of what they found. The bottom line is they said 4 parts per million is not protective of human health. And they also, during the course of this study, they pointed out that there are certain subgroups of our populations that are particularly sensitive or susceptible to certain risks, which I can, if you have questions about that later, I can add some details to that. So if we go on to the next slide, the EPA on that one was 4 parts per million, so that's in the United States. So there are associations. We don't like to to say A causes B until we've done a lot of work over a long time. But you can say A is associated with B. You know, if A is 1 part per million fluoride in your drinking water, and B is hypothyroidism, we can say that 1 part per million in your drinking water is associated with a low thyroid function. But so this is what we have a variety of studies that show associations of different levels of fluoride in the drinking water with different effects on the human body. And that applies to the teeth, where everybody, even the proponents, admit that the teeth are affected. And they're affected by producing a disease called dental fluorosis. And the dental fluorosis has different levels of effect, and the lowest level is the white mottling of the teeth, and it gets worse and worse. And I'll show you some slides of that in a moment. The problem of bone, we have very good evidence that there's an association of fluoride in drinking water and hip fracture. It's less certain with other kinds of fracture, but it's an important cause, which I would say is definitely shown to be associated with water fluoridation. And the thyroid system, it's pretty clear too. The reproductive system, we have some solid results. And in the brain, some very interesting and numerous results. Cardiovascular system is something that we three authors of the book only recently discovered that there were studies of that, and it was really difficult for us to evaluate because the cardiology is a tight club, and they use a lot of techniques that we didn't know about, but there seem to be effects on the heart and the aorta at least. And then there are other body systems. So if we go on, I think the next one will be, oh yes, I want to continue the defense against the attack that we're crazy because of that, because we say fluoride has so many different harms or possible harms. And what I want to say about that is that if you know the chemistry and biochemistry of fluoride, you would expect multiple harms. And the reason fluorine is the most reactive element in the periodic table. It reacts with everything in the periodic table except for 3 or 4 noble gases. But the biochemistry is even more important for us in that the fluoride ion has been used by biochemists in laboratory studies to poison or inactivate enzymes. And enzymes are the large proteins in our body that catalyze or that cause faster reactions. And all our body systems depend on chemical reactions. So if we have something that affects thousands of enzymes, or even hundreds, but there are thousands in our body which we depend upon, and then we would expect, and those enzymes function in all sorts of different systems, the liver, the heart, and so on. We would expect effects on the liver and the heart and so on. So that's important. There's another similar situation because a lot of the things in our bodies that signal cells to get to work in a certain way, for example, hormones, are water soluble, whereas the cell membranes are lipids mostly. And so the water soluble molecules can't go into the cell. And in the cell is where the action is going to go on, you see. So we have to get a signal in there. So there's a signal system called the G protein system that applies to many different cells in many different organs. And it has the same sort of problem with fluoride, because fluoride can tell the cell by affecting the system that you should be doing something, like the hormone is what trying to tell them. When there's no hormone there, So it's telling them the wrong thing to do. It's telling the cell the wrong thing to do. And that can apply to many different cells in different systems. So we shouldn't be surprised at what I'm going to tell you in the next few minutes. And the first one, these are just examples of dental fluorosis. And here you just see the modeling, and that's a much more serious case. And one of the things that, see, the proponents of fluoridation admit that at levels of fluoridating city water, you can get fluorosis. As a matter of fact, there's a recent study by our recent release of a study from 1999 to 2004 of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention in the United States. It shows some age groups of children have as much as 41% of them have dental fluorosis. And so the proponents say, well, mild dental fluorosis is not important, it's just cosmetic. But we all have children or know children, say young teenagers, and what we might think is an unimportant cosmetic effect is a serious thing, say for a 14-year-old girl, and it has psychological consequences. And who is arrogant enough to tell them that's not important? Well, the proponents of fluoridation sometimes tell them it's not important. So if we go to the next slide, there's some other cases that show you. And here's a representation of the CDC data I just mentioned. And the age group with 41% of them having dental fluorosis is from 12 to 15 years of age. So we better move along.
Great.
Now, we can move on to the brain. And the brain, the studies of effective fluoridation on the brain has been done in animals and in aborted fetuses, human fetuses, and in children. And we have now 23 different papers. Oftentimes we're accused of citing data that's junk science and so on. But the papers I'm mentioning to you, and the results I'm mentioning to you are published in peer-reviewed, respectable journals. And there's no lack of such data, even though the president of the Alberta Dental Health Association likes to say that there's no evidence of any harmful effects. These papers, for the most part, are competently done, and they're reviewed by peers before they're published. And so there are 23 of such studies, that mostly in China, and the reason they were done in China is because China has done some natural experiments for us. For example, and there are many different areas of China with very different levels of fluoride in their well water. So you can find, say, 2 villages in China with the same size population, same occupations. All the people in those 2 villages have lived in their village for generations. They have the same occupations and so on. And you look at the level of fluoride in their water, and you look at the prevalence of caries. You look at, and you measure, I'm going backwards, and you measure the IQ of the children. And I don't know what IQ means really, but I do know some things about it, and that is it's a product of the human nervous system, and that people with higher IQ generally have more satisfying lives and are happier than people with low IQs. So it has significance for us. In those 23 studies, was shown that in areas where the water had high fluoride, the IQ was from 5 to 10 points lower in comparison to the areas with lower fluoride in the water. And just recently, in 2010, a paper was published that looked at not the fluoride level in drinking water, but the fluoride level in the blood of the children. We already knew that there's a relation between the level in drinking water and the level in the blood, but this is a step closer to the effect, which is on the development of the nervous system. And the two things about that study that are important for us to know is that it shows the same thing, that that's significant reduction in IQ associated with higher fluoridation. But the levels of high fluoride are not much greater in the village that was studied there, not much greater than the levels the levels in the water are not much greater than in ours, and the levels in the blood are related to the levels in the water. So it's something we should worry about, especially when our children and pregnant mothers are getting water with fluoride in it without controlling the dose of fluoride. So, and in addition to those 40 animal studies, there have been. What?
You want me to go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, this one was done on rats, and the advantage here is that more precise laboratory studies can be done. And they gave them 1 part per million fluoride in their water for 1 year, and they showed kidney damage, brain damage, greater uptake of aluminum and into the brain, because the fluoride can form complexes with aluminum, which makes it possible for the aluminum to cross the blood-brain barrier, to get from the blood into the cerebrospinal fluid, in which the brain and the spinal cord reside. Not in blood, but in the cerebrospinal fluid. And furthermore, in those rats' brains, they found something characteristic of Alzheimer's disease, which are these plaques of beta amyloid plaques that seem to be associated with Alzheimer's disease. So we go on to the next slide. Then they show. Okay, that's the 20,000, and I just mentioned the 2010. So we can go on to the next slide and see. Yeah, that's just more detail about it. Let's move along. Yeah. Here's the data that backs up our belief that the drinking water concentration has a linear relationship with the serum fluoride. Well, I know the point I wanted to make about the rat studies. Those rats in that study that I showed you, results from was 1 part per million for a year they had. But in order to get the same serum concentration of blood in blood, the same blood concentration in a rat as you would get in a human, you have to give the rat much more exposure, much higher concentration than in water, 10 times as much, or more. So that's why some of the results with rats may look suspicious, but it's because you can't get the rats to have as much fluoride in their blood unless you give them much more than you would give a human in their drinking water. So let's go on to the next slide. And this is that study, the late one, looking at the association of blood level of fluoride and IQ. And these are the two distributions of IQ. And you can see that this village was the one with the low fluoride, and that's a high one. So that the presence of the fluoride is associated with the shift of that curve. So that the average IQ is considerably lower here than here. And the significance of that is in a large population, if you had 2 such groups in that population, you can get, well, these things are what we call probability density functions, and the area under the curves between 2 point, say, on this axis gives you the fraction of the whole population with that level of whatever effect you're measuring. So the difference, say, between 70, which is where psychologists say below 70 you're dealing with mental retardation, people who need care. The difference between the curves between 70, say, and 60 might be tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people in the population getting fluoridation in the United States, for example, which is close to 200 million people getting fluoridated water. So it's a significant thing. And at the other end of the scale, there is a similar number of people who are not as, say, productive or happy as if they weren't drinking fluoride. Okay, so let's go on to the next.
That explains a lot about the United States.
Well, yeah, I sometimes say, usually not in front of a group like this, but I sometimes say that's how it's fluoridation that enables the United States to elect people like George Bush.
That's what I was getting at.
Okay. Now, on the bone, in the next slide, we'll show some results of comparing two villages with widely different, not 6 villages with different levels of fluoride in their water, and this is the intake of fluoride. So here, the researchers here fully recognize the fallacy of dealing with concentration as if it were dose. So they took the circumstances of the people drinking this water and made estimates of how much fluoride they were getting per day, per person. So this is the average intake of fluoride in milligrams per day. And as the average intake goes up, and that intake that's going up because the water has more fluoride in these different 6 villages. The ones with the lowest intake, the lowest dose, has the lowest hip fractures. And this paper, we studied that pretty carefully, though there's not enough data to do all the statistical analysis one might want to do. But the trend is clear, and it's a pretty strong result, I think. In the same village, pair of villages, set of 6 villages, they didn't show this effect with fractures in general. But the collection of that data would be very different, very more difficult, because with the hip fractures, they took people over 20 years of age and asked them if you had a hip fracture. And you know pretty well whether you did or not. But if you ask someone, has Johnny ever had a fractured bone? Well, there are a lot of fractures that we don't recognize, and there are other fractures we forget about, and so on. So the data would be much more questionable. Now, in this study in Mexico, the researchers used dental fluorosis as a measure of the fluoride exposure and compared it to fracture. So they found that the children with more fluorosis had more fracture. So, okay. I should say here as an aside that when we think about dental fluorosis, what does that really mean? You know, because it's an effect on the tooth that doesn't change once the tooth is in the mouth. So how did it get fluorosis? Because there was some defect in the process of dentition, of constructing the teeth. So the cellular system that was producing the teeth was affected, and it was affected in an unfortunate way that results in fluorosis. So if that's happening, and we all admit, proponents and opponents alike, admit that there is such a thing as dental fluorosis associated with fluoride, how is it we can assume that it's not doing something similar to other cells? Well, that's a question that doesn't get very much attention. Okay, so now this is a tough one, because osteosarcoma is a rare cancer of bone. It's the cancer that Terry Fox had. It's often fatal, and when it's not fatal, it often results in amputation. It's a serious disease. And there have been a number of studies to see if there's an association between cancer, and cancer of the bone in particular, and exposure to fluoride. Most of them are uncertain. A lot of them don't show any difference, between fluoridated and non-fluoridated. But those studies include all kinds of people at all times of life. But in 2006, there was a report published by a young woman at Harvard who was a dentist but was doing a thesis for a PhD, who studied in the following way. She looked at male children between 8 and 12 or something, sometime during which there's a growth spurt, and then watched them later on, up to age 20 or so, and found what looks like a pretty robust difference between fluoridated water drinkers at that age, in those years, and non-fluoridated work. So that study is avidly disputed by proponents, but they've never answered the question of what is the difference between those studies that don't show it and this study that did. So it's something that should be studied more. And as far as I know, not being studied more. Most of these studies looking at toxic effects were not done in countries that fluoridate. It's very hard to get support for research projects that look for effects like that in countries that fluoridate. Okay, well, let's skip this.
Oh, the pineal gland is important.
Oh, the pineal, okay. Yeah, all right.
Very important.
Okay, for Pat's sake, I'll say about the pineal gland that the pineal gland is probably what is responsible for the timing of the development of our reproductive systems, and in particular, the age of menarche. And so there's been one difference in that Newburgh Kingston study showed that girls reach menarche, that's sexual maturity, 5 months earlier than. About this in detail, in the biochemical detail about what things fluoride affects, the enzymes that adjust the balance between the different thyroid hormones, which determine our metabolic rate and so on. And the point, there are 2 points made here. One is that doctors in Europe in particular for some time gave fluoride to patients who had hyperthyroidism, so that it would tone down the function of the thyroid system. And these doses, my physician colleague who's now very active in opposing fluoridation in Calgary tells me are very low doses of fluoride that have this effect. And you can also find data that shows that the fluoride in fluoridated areas, in fluoridated areas you see more goiter. That's an enlargement of the thyroid gland due to hypothyroidism than you do in non-fluoridated areas. Okay, and this is a sort of a summing up. The importance of this slide is that these, in the red, these are concentrations of the drinking water, and in the green under are effects that have been observed. And those concentrations are not much different from what we use in Calgary. And again, it has a very uncertain relationship to dose. Okay, medical ethics. Well, medical ethics in the modern era really began its development with the 1945 Treaty of London, which established the Nuremberg trials, and there were issues about in the concentration camps, German doctors doing experiments on humans and so on. But it's developed over the ensuing decades, and till every hospital or university where research on human subjects is done has a medical ethics committee. And there are certain principles of medical ethics that are required before an experiment can be done, or even before treatment of anyone can be done. By extension, we can outside the research area, and those requirements for doing or administering either a procedure or a drug, and fluoride is a drug. It's administered for medical purposes, and the courts in the United States and Canada have recognized and decided that it's a drug. And so in order to give someone, we'll leave the procedures behind and just talk about the drugs. The administration of that drug, the drug has to be approved by a qualified body. Like in the United States, the FDA has not approved fluoride or fluorosilicic acid. It's called an unapproved drug. And Health Canada has sort of approved it, but so one of the requirements is the substance has to have been approved by a qualified body. It must be administered with a controlled dose. The effects must be followed by a qualified professional, and it can't be given until the person has given informed consent. Informed consent means that the person who's going to receive this drug must have been informed of the reasons it's being given, what it's supposed to do, and the possible side effects. Must be able to ask a qualified professional questions about those points, and must be able to stop taking it if they don't want it. Fluoridation fails to qualify on all of these levels, except perhaps you could argue that in Canada it's an approved drug. One of the medical officers of health who works based in Calgary told me yesterday that it's not a drug, it's not a medicine. And so it's not, because he didn't want to use the term mass medication. So I said, well, okay, it's mass administration. Well, he said he didn't like that either. I said, well, how can you deny that? So he finally said, okay, it's mass administration. Well, anyway, it fails on all those grounds. And so no matter whether it's effective or not, no matter whether we know it has harmful effects or not, no one has the right to force you to take it. And you shouldn't be given it without your informed consent, without explanations and being able to question the qualified professional about its effects, and without control of the dose. And that's our situation now. So it seems to me if you answer the third of those questions that I asked with no, you don't have to worry about efficacy or toxicity, you just have to stop it. And if you want to give people an opportunity to have fluoride by their own free choice, then you have to provide that some other way than putting it in a public water supply. So now, in the last slide, and I probably have taken too much time, it's almost 9 o'clock. This is just where you can get more information if you want. There are a lot more sources in this, but I think these are the most convenient and best ones. The Fluoride Action Network, well, these are two different web pages in one website, but it has a very nice ongoing, kept up bibliography on the science in categories, so you can find it. And the second book also has a similar bibliography. And the book, the Fluoride Deception, for those of you who are curious of how this this got started and possibly why. That's a very nice little book. Christopher Bryson did research on this. He's an investigative reporter. He worked for 10 years preparing to write this book, and it is meticulously documented. There are 120 pages in fine print of documents and quotations and minutes of government meetings and so on. It's a horror tale, really. And the last book, the one I'm not profiting from, is the latest thing we have on the science. And it's the Calgary Public Library has a few copies, and I think some bookstores have some copies. It's from an American publisher, a U.S. publisher, but it's available from Amazon.ca. It's structured in 6 sections and chapters that are about particular topics. For example, a section on the possible harms. There's one on the brain, one on bone, and so on, things like that. And each one of those chapters discusses research results, and the citations of the references we use to come to get that discussion and come to conclusions about it is given in the endnotes by chapter. So if someone wants curious about one thing, a particular thing, you can quickly find out where to go. There are about 80 pages or so of references, which are there for the use of practitioners and scientists, but that's evidence that we didn't make this up, you know. And we hope that it's readable for just about anyone, and it doesn't require scientific background.